Hello, welcome everybody to the next round of the JSS, the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association seminar on Shochu and cocktails. Today we'll be talking about Koji, how Koji works, and then we'll be talking about how to use Shochu in cocktails. Joining us, we've got some amazing bartenders from London, coming from, well, at this point, hard to say where anyone is really coming from, mostly coming from home, but we have some folks from London, and we have some folks from Spain. Amazing bartenders who are among the 50 best bars in the world, some of the best bartenders, up and coming folks, as well as well-established folks. So we'll be talking about all sorts of things from the beginnings of how to start up and thinking about this to the more advanced, how does this actually work? So let's kick this off. If everyone would like to introduce yourselves, I'll start. My name is Don Lee. I'm based in New York City. Up until recently, I ran a bar called Existing Conditions. At the moment, I am locked down just like everyone else, and hopefully we'll be, starting a new project soon. Ryan, would you introduce yourself?
Of course. So my name's Ryan Chetiyawardana, or Mr. Lion, and I am a bartender based in London, and I jump across a variety of different projects, all falling under the Lion moniker. And we have bars split in London with Lioness, over in Amsterdam with Super Lion, and then our most recent baby, Silver Lion in Washington, DC. And joining from our team in London, I'm very glad to have Marie joining us.
Hi, so I'm Marie. I'm based in London. Obviously, I'm in my house right now because we're in lockdown, and I've been working in Dandelion and Lioness for the last 3 years now.
Great, and coming from Spain, Diego, will you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Diego from Madrid, from Samanguru, and I have a super big question. Ryan, can you repeat your last name, please?
Chetiyawardana.
Oh my goodness, it's super complicated.
I've been saying it wrong for years.
I am Diego Cabrera. I am bartender from 20, I don't know, years ago. I live in Madrid for 20 years. And we have different projects. Obviously, we are in the semi-lockdown, like the rest of the world. We passed last week a big storm in Madrid. This is a super complicated situation now, but we are happy to stay with you here with my rookie, Melanie, part of my team.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mel. I am from Samanguru here in Madrid too. We work together. I've been working here for already 3 years, and we have a lot of fun over here. So guys, I hope you enjoy this meeting.
I'm so jealous that you're inside of a bar. I haven't been in one in so long.
Yeah, we are lucky. We're lucky one. We're lucky team.
So we're going to talk a little bit about what is Shochu, what makes it special, and if anyone has any questions, please, feel free at any point to put it in the chat. If I can, I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up afterwards if we don't get to it during the, as we're going through all these different cocktails and we're having this discussion. But if you also have questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to JSS or any of us individually. We would love to, help answer your questions, including getting in touch with specific people in your area if you need, contacts on how to get any of this stuff besides just the general, how do I make cocktails or what is Shochu? So we talked a little bit about what is Shochu more generally as a category last time. This time we're going to talk a little bit more about what makes it really special compared to other products. And the magic ingredient, I would say, compared to anything else is Koji. So Koji is a mold. So if you think about, a lot of people outside of our industry, people who maybe aren't thinking about food in the way that we are, they might find that a little bit scary. But, if you think about it, cheese is mold. Mold is something that is everywhere. You think that it's when food goes bad, there's mold, but actually mold is one of those things that we as people have domesticated in the same way that we have, we take plants and we domesticate them. We take something like a grass and we grow it over generations until we get something like corn, which wouldn't naturally exist in the world. Why would a plant grow these giant kernels? Well, it's because humans intervened for thousands of years and we selectively bred this grass, which would have been like any other grass normally, to become this, genetic mutant that is corn. In that same way, we have also domesticated other things. And most people think, oh, like cows, you know, maybe you think of your pet dog as a domesticated wolf, but in actuality, we domesticate tiny things that we don't normally think about every day. Maybe the thing we do think about is we think about domesticating yeast. We all know that if you want to make bread, you need yeast. If you need to make beer, or if eventually you're going to take something like a beer or wine and then distill it into hard alcohol, you need yeast. Yeast is this tiny microorganism that's going to eat sugar and turn it into alcohol. And it isn't this, you know, magical, like it's in the air and we don't really know anything about it and just happens, which is often the story that a producer would tell you. We have this special thing that that only exists right here. Well, that's true to a certain extent, but it also exists everywhere. But what they have is something that they have selectively bred, something that they have reduced to a very specific flavor profile that is right for them, for their region, for whatever they are turning into alcohol. And in that same way, we've actually done that with various kinds of molds. And so outside of alcohol, outside of Koji, and when we think about Shochu, the most common thing that you already eat every day that is made from mold is cheese. And maybe when you think of that, that block yellow American cheese, that comes in a single wrapped in plastic, maybe that doesn't feel like it's made from mold, but in actuality it is. It just comes from more of an industrial practice. If you think about, maybe more like blue cheese, all those blue veins that are inside that cheese, those are streaks of mold. And in fact, not only is that mold special to the delicious flavor of blue cheese, but blue cheese, Roquefort, that mold is the same mold that is penicillin. That's how we cure diseases. So mold is also used by the medical industry, something that we're all thinking about right now about vaccines and how do we fight, things that want to invade our body. Mold is used even there. So penicillin is a mold, also delicious. And I'm not suggesting that you take some blue cheese and you rub it on yourself, but if end times come, we need to rebuild society. Just remember, penicillin comes from Roquefort, if you have to, rebuild medical science. But how does it work with Shochu? Well, Koji is a specific kind of mold that's used in the same way that we use malting. So if you take a bunch of starch and you want to turn it into alcohol, you first need to break that starch into sugar, because yeast wants to eat sugar and turn sugar into alcohol. Yeast doesn't know what to do with starch. Starch is just a complex sugar. It's a bunch of sugar molecules that have been mashed together, and it's too big. The yeast can't handle it. So you need something else to break it down first. So another way to think about these small microorganisms is, unlike us, where we're this very complex organism, when we eat something, we put it inside of ourselves. And then magically to us, somehow things happen. We turn that, thing that we eat into, nutrition. We're able to live our life and then, get rid of it. When you're a tiny single cell organism, you don't have an inside that does that. You don't have a digestive system. So what you're actually doing is you're kind of trying to digest the world around you rather than trying to digest something inside of you. Breaking starch into sugar is something that is really actually, we do it every day without thinking about it. It's in our saliva. Amylose is an enzyme that breaks starch into sugar. It's the most common enzyme that we use when we're turning starch into sugar for making things like beer, making things like whiskey. And it already exists in your mouth right now. If you've ever had that experience where you take something like white rice or white bread and you just keep chewing it, you keep running it in your mouth, you turn it into a mush, eventually it starts getting sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. And that's because your digestive enzyme, starting with your saliva, is breaking starch into sugar so that your body can use that sugar as energy. But in that same way, that bacteria, the mold, the yeast, they don't have that inside where they're able to do that. So they essentially are doing it on their outside. So they will produce that enzyme, amylose, and they're kind of like spitting it out into the world. And in a weird way, when you walk down the street, and especially nowadays, you should be wearing a mask and not doing this, but if you were to spit on the ground, you're doing the same thing that bacteria and mold is doing, where you're saying, digest that. Sidewalk, start being digested. I'm sending my enzymes to you. doesn't really work in doing anything, but that's essentially what mold, that's what yeast is trying to do. They're trying to take these chemicals, push it out into the world, dissolve it, make the rest of the world digestible to itself so that it can then use that as energy. So Koji, this wonderful magical mold, what it does is it eats things around it by breaking it down from complex things into more basic things. So it is going to break that starch into sugar. And then we will do, for making shochu, what we'll do is we'll then add regular yeast to then eat that sugar and turn it into alcohol. But there's other things that are happening that we don't really think about too often when we're thinking about other alcohols. And this is where shochu is really unique and unlike any other distilled spirits. Besides the enzyme that breaks starch into sugar, there are other enzymes that are being created by that mold. And what those enzymes are doing is they're breaking down proteins into the building blocks that make proteins called amino acids. So you may know, if you're into nutrition or if you're into more like hippie health food, that you can buy something like coconut aminos or just like aminos that are straight. You can add this as a dietary like thing to your food. Or you may have seen nutritional yeast that you add to add savoriness to your food. That may be like a new health craze today, but what that accomplishes in food has been used for thousands of years before. We just didn't think of it as, oh, here's a healthy thing that I'm adding, this thing called an amino acid. They just got it naturally in things like miso and in soy sauce. Miso and soy sauce both also come from Koji. You're using that same mold that is used to make sake, to make shochu. You're using it to break down the proteins that are in, whether it's rice or in soybeans or other things that you're trying to ferment, break them down, those complex proteins, those complex starches, into the constituent parts, into sugars, into amino acids. And what that does is it creates flavor, specifically the flavors of amino acids. Or if you want to break it down to maybe something that you've heard of before, breaking it down into umami flavors. Our body needs amino acids because it needs to create proteins. These days we hear about it a lot because of this coronavirus and spike proteins. They're things that are, these complex molecules that are created by combining amino acids. Our body can make some of these amino acids, but it can't make all of them. So you need to eat things that have these amino acids for your body to be healthy and to create all the proteins it needs. So in the same way that you naturally crave salt and you naturally crave sugar, because those are things that, from birth, you instantly, our bodies biologically want those things. We also biologically want amino acids. We want these savory flavors. And when we have those savory flavors, it gives us, a sense of well-being in a way that other things don't. And when we think of other junk foods, snack food makers, they've known this for a long time, and they will make snack foods more salty, more sugary, and now more savory by adding things like MSG to hit those triggers in our mind, to make us crave those things, because that is what our body naturally wants. So when you're having a bad day and you're like, I just need to eat this tub of ice cream, I need this sugar, I need this fat because it makes me feel better. That's the natural body chemistry, because your body wants those things. And when it gets those things, it releases, these chemicals in your brain that make you feel good. And in that same way, when we have things like soy sauce or miso, it adds complexity to our food. It adds a savory component to our food, but it also hits this small thing in the back of our head that says, ooh, that's got a little extra something to it. And it's not necessarily that it tastes like anything, but it just tastes better. So often you'll hear cooks say when you're cooking, you always want to salt your food. And that's not because you want it to taste like salt, but because the salt is going to add something to it. It's going to bring something else out, and it's going to make it taste better. It's going to make it taste more like itself. Koji is going to do that to the things that it is breaking down. It's going to make things like rice or barley or sweet potato, 3 of the most common things you'll find in a shochu, taste more like itself. And it'll break those down into these amino acids that your body secretly is craving, whether you know it or not. And it is something that doesn't exist in any other distilled spirit. And it is really unique in that way. So when you're thinking shochu, when you say, why should I have shochu? You know, what makes it so special and different? That is one thing that really nothing else has. And it's the magic of Koji being the building blocks of making shochu. So this is kind of a, you know, a basic intro to how Koji works. Koji is also being used today by chefs in, you know, in fancy restaurants, which we sadly can't go to anymore. Noma, for example, had a fermentation lab that was playing with this extensively. If you think about other savory things that are concentrated by, you know, by taking something and like drying it, let's say. So if you take something like meat and you dry age it, and you, what's happening? It is concentrating flavor. Water is leaving it. It is breaking down those proteins. It's breaking them down to amino acids, and now we get more savoriness out of it. What if I don't want to wait 14 weeks for my dry aged steak? Well, you could also take a piece of meat, coat it in Koji, let the Koji do the work for you, and now you get this Koji aged product, which in a couple of days will taste more savory. This is something that exists in Japanese supermarkets today. You can buy something called shio Koji, salt Koji, and it's like a marinade. You buy it in a little like tube in a bottle, you smear it on your chicken and your pork, on your meat, whatever you're cooking, and it's going to be a marinade that turns that meat into something more savory by breaking it down further. So this is being used in all sorts of places. It is a very fascinating product and unique to shochu. And so we're going to talk today with these great bartenders about how they think about shochu in making cocktails. And maybe, you know, if I know Ryan has been to Japan and he's seen some of this crazy shochu making process and seen this Koji live. So Ryan, let's kick things over to you. What's your, you know, how did you get introduced to shochu? You know, what do you think about Koji, and what's the cocktail you want to share with us?
So I think you're like exactly right. I think the fact that it's so unique to other styles of spirits, as a professional, it just intrigued me. You know, I've been to Japan a number of times, and I've always been fascinated by, you know, the cuisine, the approach, the way that they use different transformative elements to change the flavor of the ingredients that surround them. And having, you know, delved into the world of spirits and tried lots of different things, when I first experienced shochu, it was the distinctness that it had. And I think, you know, even for me as a Western bartender, feeling a little bit ignorant to it, going, you know, I didn't know tons about it. Sometimes it was hard to be able to, you know, navigate some of the labels to understand what it was really kind of, you know, what was going on within it. But as I started to experience more, you see the kind of diversity of the range. Not only do you see different kind of source materials, you know, you're seeing, as you said, sweet potato, rice, barley, you're also getting carrot or shiso or chestnut. And then you add in the layer of different Koji effects. How is black Koji, white Koji, yellow Koji? And as you say, as they selectively start to kind of breed and nurture these specific to each distillery, and then you also get different effects of, you know, different temperature distillations and different ways of kind of capturing that profile. It just became really fascinating to me. It was something that I thought was a really interesting development in, you know, the repertoire you want to be able to have as a bartender. And particularly to me, what's always, you know, been very intriguing is, I suppose, dispelling some myths. I always, you know, I find it frustrating with, you know, when people look at whiskey and you go, oh, you don't mix whiskey, or they look at vodka on the opposite side and say it's a white spirit, it's just blank, you use it to fortify the other flavors. I kind of found it really interesting with shochu, where it kind of has elements of both of those camps. It's a white spirit, but it has tons of body. It's got texture, and it's got a lot of those kind of umami notes. You talked about those kind of amino acids, those other kind of flavor components that are formed during those kind of like parallel or double fermentations that give you something really different on the other end. And so I had a lot of fun exploring that, thinking about how could I use these different styles of shochu, but also how could I find ways of, I suppose, flipping my experience on its head, not just relying on the categories or styles of cocktails that I previously employed and trying to slot this new spirit into it, but actually building it up from that flavor profile and going, okay, we've got really incredible, you get some of these have this amazing kind of tropical fruitiness to them because you've taken on, this double kind of fermentation. It's got lots of these different kind of wonderful estery notes. You get some real brightness in them, but it's usually underpinned with this incredible savory note. So the drink I'm going to make for you, I mean, having said that I haven't relied on cocktail families, I'm making an old fashioned, but it was, it was a fun way for me to kind of explore, I suppose, like those really kind of hands-off cocktail approaches do, really looking like without trying to add in too many different flavors, just something that spoke to the nuances of the spirit itself. So I'm using a sweet potato shochu. And interestingly, you think about an old fashioned being, a higher strength spirit that you're opening out with dilution, you're serving over ice so it goes on a particular journey. This is actually only at, I was going to get my maths wrong then, it's 50 proof, 25% ABV. And it's actually creating a slightly gentler style old fashioned. It's still keeping it very close to the spirit, but what it's doing is, I suppose it creates a different profile. A lot of the ways that this was drunk, I was very fortunate actually with Diego and our Shochu aunties who are on the line. I had a chance to visit Japan and visit some of the kind of distilleries in Kyushu, and seeing the way that it sat as a social drink. That was something that I wanted to create here. It's often alongside food, but it's very forgiving in that ABV to be something that you can enjoy kind of as an aperitif, which you might not think of as an old fashioned. So it's really simple. It's stirred over ice and served over ice. And I've just got a couple of different flavor notes, accents that are really looking to pull out those kind of aspects of this shochu. So being in lockdown, I have used some of the things that surround me, but really it was about looking at the different notes within it. So I'm using a classic formula of spirit, sugar, bitters, and water. The sugar syrup, however, is using some fig leaf. It's something I have growing in the house. It's got this incredible kind of fruitiness to it. It's got a green note, but it's also got this kind of tropical edge. It kind of hints towards kind of pineapple, coconut, obviously then with that fig association as well. And one of the things I found in sweet potato, a lot of the sweet potato shochus to me go quite tropical. When we were down visiting some of the distilleries, particularly when you were smelling the fermentations, it's like going from everything from, guavas to pineapples to passion fruit. And it was, you get some of those carrying through, and that's what I wanted to add in here. So I'm going to use 2 teaspoons, so 10 mils. Again, apologies for those in the US. I'm not great with my conversions, but it's just under half an ounce. Don't correct me if I'm way off the mark.
Nope, right there.
Nice. I'm going to use some Peychaud bitters, a little touch of kind of anise that I think helps bridge it round. So quite a heavy dose, 5 dashes of some Peychaud. And then just because I like making things weird, but with some method to the madness, I'm using a bit of fish sauce. So this again was a bit analogous to what the Koji is doing. I'm really fascinated by, well, I've loved using microbes in drinks, but things that adds, I suppose, a kind of can't quite put your finger on it. Now, this isn't here to make it taste like fish. It's actually there it's kind of a garum, like using like a soy sauce or, one of those complex things that's been created by bacteria. This adds an amazing savory note in the background. It's a little bit of a funk. So by itself, it does have that big punch, but actually what it's doing is lifting that savoriness from within the shochu. And it actually brings this incredible kind of fruity pop. So I'm going to try and not dump a ton in, but it's actually 3 dashes, which is about a drop of our fish sauce. And I'm using what's a high nitrogen one. So it's a 40N is the style, but really a good quality fish sauce will do what you need it to do. And then finally, I'm going to use 2 ounces or 60 mils of our sweet potato shochu. And again, because it's a slightly lower ABV, I don't need to do lots of dilution at this stage. It's really just opening the spirit out and making sure that it's completely kind of homogenized as a mix, but also bringing in that chill. So stirring it down over ice and really kind of allowing those kind of elements of the, the sweetness, the bitterness, that little touch of funk in the background to start to lift out from the spirit. So a short stir, and then we're going to strain this into a frozen glass over a big hunk of ice. It takes on a really nice kind of pink hue because we're using kind of a heavy dash of the Peychaud. And again, I've got some grapefruit growing in the house. I've got a little Four Season orange. I'm just going to scratch the skin and drop it on top. And I suppose it's like a little nod to the kind of citrus peel you'd express over the top, but it's there more to be, well, not so kind of over in the oiliness, because I think this has a delicacy to it that I didn't want to kind of overbear with a ton of kind of oils drifting over the top, but you do want that little citrus lead. It's one of, again, the kind of flavor notes that's in the shochu, and it was a nice way of kind of lifting it out. But a really simple way to enjoy it. And I think this was the thing that I was excited by, both, doing these sessions and encouraging people to, not be scared of it as a product and be excited by mixing it. But to really show that there was a lot of opportunity in how to mix this, thinking of it both as a white spirit and as something with a ton of richer flavors and textures. It kind of works in both ways. So it's a white spirit old fashioned that, behaves very differently to something else you might have picked up. And it's called the Auntie Old Fashioned in homage to our lovely friends who took us around Kyushu so well.
Cool, thanks, Ryan. So I think most people, if you thought you were going to be scared of how do I work with shochu, you're probably more scared of how do I work with fish sauce. One thing that I found, often if you're looking at recipes that involve fish sauce, they'll always tell you, make sure you buy a good one. And it's like, if you don't know anything about fish sauce, what's a good fish sauce, right? And I just like to point out, if you could hold that bottle up, you're using Red Boat, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Red Boat, that label, it's widely available now, certainly available online. If you don't have an Asian food store you can go to, it's actually almost easier to find it in a health food store in the US than it is to find in a necessarily an Asian market. So you're going to find that in places like Whole Foods. It's on Amazon. It's really easy to find. A little bit goes a long way. And if you're afraid of using fish sauce because it sounds weird, do you know how Worcestershire is made? It's pretty weird. And when you put it in a Bloody Mary, you don't want the Bloody Mary to taste like Worcestershire. You just add a little Worcestershire to add a little bit more to it, right? So I thought that was super cool that you're using fish sauce in that drink. You alluded to, there's a higher proof and a lower proof with shochu. And I didn't really talk about that because I was focusing more on the Koji, but I mean, the distillation technique is wildly different. And the flavors that come out are wildly different. Ryan, when you're thinking about making this drink, why did you pick that, that style of production as opposed to going with a higher proof, which most people might think, oh, old fashioned, I need to go like real beefy alcohol strong. So what were you thinking there?
I mean, you're absolutely right. I think, so the Genshu, the higher proof style would be, I think, what you'd naturally lean to when making this style of drink. But what you start to notice is the complexity of what ABV does to a spirit. And I think we take this for granted. There was a movement in the bartending world that you just wanted higher. And in some ways that gives you a different control because you're able to then bring it down to a particular proof that suits your serve. But what I found really interesting with this is at that 25% ABV, what it actually brought to the table in terms of texture and balance of flavors. Now, obviously I'm pulling that down as I dilute it, and then further as you drink through the drink, it's going to dilute and continue to drop down. But that arc of that drink, the dilution that it took on, I found actually worked wonderfully and really harmoniously with this kind of lower proof drink. So firstly, you've got a drink that's a little bit more forgiving. If you're having kind of an afternoon drink or you're having alongside food, you want something that you're not going to get the big punch of alcohol that's going to potentially dominate other flavors that are surrounding it. But it really starts to take on, I suppose it flips in your head the way that you start to think of dilution. And I think that's a really fascinating thing about the category is you don't default to the idea of like higher proof being better. What it's giving you is a different representation. And I think this is the thing that I love about amazing spirits is you're seeing the choice of the maker. you're seeing where they want to represent certain parts of this. And particularly with shochu, I think you start to see, okay, how do they want to reflect what sweet potato is? It's not about neutrality. This isn't like a white spirit that's like blank. It's just being made from varieties of different kind of sugar sources. It's about the way that that distiller wants to be able to kind of decide how that sweet potato is manifested. And with this at 25%, I had that like perfect balance of umami kind of richness. It had that tropical lift, and it had this kind of beautiful texture. It's kind of a really creamy kind of weight to it. So that's the reason I went towards the 25%.
Cool. One of the things that I learned when I went to Japan that I really didn't understand just looking at bottles and first starting to learn about shochu was that lower proof isn't, if you think about like a whiskey and you think about like a barrel proof whiskey to a lower proof whiskey, they're distilling the same thing and they're adding water at some point. So it totally makes sense that bartenders want the concentrated version. That is not the case with shochu. It is a completely different distillation technique where they're doing it under a vacuum. It's more closer to doing a rotovap than it is to doing distillation, in the traditional sense. And they are distilling to proof. They are not, making one thing, and then, adding more water to make one versus the less diluted other one. It is a completely different product. And as you said, like it even from the same producer using the same base fermentation, widely different product when you actually taste the two. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's probably closer to, the way that people are learning about mezcal production now. And you're seeing the fact that it is that choice of distilling to proof, and that's the representation that is desired. It's not about it being like a higher proof being a preferential thing, or as you say, you're getting the concentrated version. It is actually about that choice. And I think that's really fascinating.
Cool. So Ryan, you work with Marie, and Marie, what was your introduction to shochu? And do you blame Ryan for infecting you with this new category? And how do you think about it? And what's your cocktail?
So definitely, I've learned most of it with Ryan, because I wasn't very familiar with shochu before the last few weeks actually. So Ryan explained me about it, and I had no idea was that many category of shochu. I was just thinking clear spirit, kind of a sake, but I had no idea how different they would be from one another one. So I got 2 bottles sent to my home, so I was very lucky. So the first one I received is a rice shochu. Also the bottles are really nice, so I'm definitely gonna keep that when I'm finished to drink them. And the second one is buckwheat shochu. And when I tried them side to side, they're completely different. Like, I had the idea of the drink before I received the bottle at home. So I was like, I'm gonna make something low ABV, bamboo, my favorite drink. So I can make something with pheno. And actually, when I made both of this drink with different shochu, it was extremely savory and intense with the buckwheat one. So I decided to go a bit more like lighter and floral with the rice one. So yeah, I decided to do like a martini bamboo twist with it. I had one homemade ingredient. So obviously I'm not in Lioness right now, so I've decided to use something that is around my house. So I'm using some dry vermouth, so any vermouth that you can find in your shop. I found some miso paste, and also I had some cacao husks going around my house, which don't ask me why, but I had them here. So usually to infuse something in a spirit, we use a water bath. I don't have a water bath at home, so I basically infuse my vermouth with these 2, still in the water bath, homemade water bath for like half an hour. So it gave me like this really nutty, really savory vermouth that I'm gonna use in my cocktail. And I'm going to use some pheno, and yeah, I can make it right now actually. So per drink, I've used 15 mils of my homemade vermouth. I have no idea how many ounces is that. I have no clue. So I'm gonna say 15.
It's half an ounce.
Half an ounce. Okay, perfect. Half an ounce of Tio Pepe Pheno Sherry. I'm using 30 mils, so 1 ounce of rice shochu. And to add a little bit of fruitiness, this floral note, I'm adding 5 ml of Saint-Germain, which is delicious elderflower liqueur. So I'm stirring this over ice, and I'm gonna serve this in a cold, oops, my ice is stuck, 1 second.
I think one thing bartenders have been learning over this quarantine is how to bartend from sitting down at a table. It's very strange.
Sorry about that. I've got some problem with my eyes here. So I'm stirring this over ice. Very nice and cold, chilled cook right here. And also with the leftover of the miso and the cacao husks, I've made a delicious cracker, because in Lioness we try to reuse and be sustainable as much as we can. So at home I try to reuse everything. So basically we have no waste in this drink. And the garnish is edible, which is always delicious as well. There we go. And I've called this drink the Oishi Martini. So I found out Oishi in Japanese, please get me if I'm wrong, means like savory or delicious. So I was like, that sounds like a really cool name. So that's my drink for you guys today. Cheers.
Great. Yeah, Oishi, delicious. It's often, you'll hear people exclaim it when you taste something for the first time. You know, it's kind of an anime, like someone will sit down for a meal, they'll eat something, they'll be like, oh, Oishi, it's so delicious. So yeah, a delicious martini is, it sounds quite delicious. So you had 2 different kinds of shochu, and I've had both of those, so I know, but they're wildly different. The rice shochu and the buckwheat shochu. So did you try using both of those in that same recipe and then choose the rice, or how did you decide to use rice and not the buckwheat?
So basically, in London, it's very difficult to get hold on shochu right now. I mean, deliveries are a bit crazy. So Ryan was very kind to order 2 bottles to make sure that at least one would turn up, and they happened to arrive the same day. So I was very lucky. I tried the buckwheat first, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna make this drink. And I was like, oh, it's quite punchy. I'm gonna try it with the rice one, which is obviously completely different. So yeah, I made the same drinks a few times with different recipe, but the same base with different shochu, and I really like this one. I think it's very delicate, very floral, slightly nutty. I just really like it. So I say ricey is a good way.
Yeah, I mean, between the two, it's, you know, it's same thing. It's like if you had, you know, white rice, you can kind of imagine what that's like. And if you've never had buckwheat on its own, it's much like, you know, much more, it's more like brown rice. It's more like, you know, like bran. It's, you know, if you've had like the difference between white bread and rye bread or like whole wheat bread, it has a lot more going on with it. And yeah, I can see how in that martini style application, going with the white rice, you know, would give you that more of a cleaner base to build on versus that buckwheat, which is it's quite intense. And I think a lot of people would be very surprised. They're like, this is a white spirit, right? With that buckwheat.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of our guests in Lioness probably wouldn't be very familiar with shochu, but you would make a drink like this and they would definitely love that. So like, I really like it. I think it works very well.
Yeah, and for those of you watching that are curious about that buckwheat shochu, the last session we did, we had a bartender make a cocktail using the buckwheat shochu, and they really embraced buckwheat all the way down. And if you've ever had soba noodles are made from buckwheat flour. So they made a cocktail inspired by buckwheat noodles using, you know, a buckwheat shochu. So everyone, you know, go check out that video. That's one of those cocktails that I really want to try after the quarantine is over, because you know it's kind of a weird combination I would never think to put together. It's like, how do you take buckwheat noodles and turn that into a cocktail? Ryan, I think that'll be right up your alley. Marie, working with the miso, you know, most people probably haven't used miso in a cocktail. So you know, so you buy miso, it comes in a tub. How do you make that into something you use in the cocktail?
So we're using miso in lioness. It's not something that is scary to us. We're using quite like super savory. We're using sake leaves. We're using interesting thing lioness. So I was like, oh, miso. I mean, umami. When you think about umami, miso is the first thing you have in mind. So I was like, I think I didn't know what it would taste like, the vermouth with the miso. But like, I think a vermouth with some miso, also cacao husk is also very umami. So it's like all this together can only give something quite nutty, quite delicious. So I think, yeah, I just gave it a try and it worked.
Yeah, and so you put that with the vermouth. You didn't have a water bath, and then you just strained it off, and that's all you did. You didn't do any other thing to the miso.
No, so basically, I just put in a freezer bag. I put everything together and I put in some hot water for half an hour. So like kind of a hot water bath. And after this half an hour, the vermouth was quite like cloudy. So I was a bit scared that my martini would look a bit too brown. But filtering through a coffee filter, it came out, where is my glass now? It came out obviously nutty, but in the drink, it doesn't look too bad. And it was quite clear. So yeah, that's it.
Right.
So
especially if, if people are used to sherry, they're probably not worried about that kind of oxidized brown flavor, color, right?
I love sherry. Probably why I went for that.
Yeah, and if for those of you that are interested in playing with miso as an ingredient, miso comes in a wide variety of styles as well. So there's the regular brown miso that you kind of think of when you think of like a miso soup, but there's also a white miso that isn't going to be as dark. There's like a red miso that's going to be even more intense in terms of a color sense. And miso can also be more or less salty. So if you want to play with miso, don't be discouraged by the first one you buy and you're like, oh, this is too much. Try lots of different kinds of miso, especially for those of us in the industry. Find chefs that are working with it that are your friends and have them taste you on a lot of different misos because they are wildly different. And just putting miso in a cocktail, it's like saying I used whiskey. Well, that's a huge category. Like what whiskey did you use? So thank you for your cocktail. Diego, let's go over to you. So you were in Japan with Ryan. You got to experience shochu, right where it's made. Was that the first time you had shochu? How did you, get introduced to it?
That travel I think is the best travel in my life with the shochu family. It's like super friendly, super beautiful. Yes, it's my first contact with real contact with shochu. I know shochu 1 year before or 1 year and a half, but no, really I don't in that moment I don't know it's about the shochu. It's what is shochu? It's from Japan, from where? It's like a spirit, it's fermented, it's with distillation. It's the knowledge about the shochu was very short. No, I think it's the same problem for the bartenders around the world because no one know really about the shochu. And you have another problem when ¿Estamos ahí? Yeah. Sorry. You have another problem. If you have a bottle in your hands, when you see the bottle, the brand, the label, you see this. What is this? This is shochu, is awamori, is sake. What is this? We are lucky because in Spain you can buy a lot of different shochus and awamori and Japanese products, obviously, like sake or miso or different salts. But this is our selection in Salmon Guru. It's a short selection, but big for the category. Imagine Shin in Spain is the queen. We have maybe 20, 25 or 30 different Shins. If we speak about the whiskey, we have maybe 16 different brands. But shochu is a short category, it's new category, and we have difference to surprise the customers. Like, for example, this we use to introduce the Shochu because it's aging in the Mitsunara. It's the first Shochu in the history aging Shochu in cask. In this case, in Mitsunara, and we use this to introduce the product. If you like the rum, if you like whiskey, if you like bourbon, if you like something different spirit, we use this for introduce. If you prefer more refreshing, or if you prefer more flower, we have another option like akatsaru, the pronunciation is, but akatsaru or ichiko, you know. But after your presentation, after the Raya presentation, I can add more information because your presentation was incredible. Thank you very much. And if you are ready, I am ready to make a cocktail.
Yeah, let's make a cocktail.
Yes. Follow me, Adri. Thank you. Adri is our cameraman. In this occasion, obviously, I am the black sheep. I don't in this occasion I use awamori, no Shochu, because we have another cocktail, black made with black Koji, in black bottle, all black. I don't know. Okay, this option is a sour. This option we have in the menu. We have the different cocktails in the menu. This. Okay, this is a sour cocktail. We sell a lot because it's super with balance, a little bit refreshing, balance with the citrics. Okay, okay. We start with 5 cl. Better. This awamori is aging 5 years in ceramic. Okay, why this awamori? Because is the spirit of my cocktail. I need a character. It's 35% of alcohol. Okay, 35. 5 cl. Okay, this cocktail is a bridge between Mexico to Japan. The reason why I use Alto Mezcal, 1 cl. 1 cl of green chartreuse. Chipotle syrup. This is homemade chipotle syrup. It's super easy to do in your house. So 30 grams of chipotle syrup you can buy in a lot of shops here in Madrid. I don't know in USA or in England, but in all Latin shops you can buy this. How do you say lata? Thing. One thing. You put with simple syrup, 1 bottle of simple syrup, 1 tin of chipotle for you cook for 15 minutes approx. Egg white. Oh, sorry, a bit of fresh lemon, 4 cl. Shake it. Super easy, super good. The name of if honeymoon, Oishi honeymoon. No. It's a little bit spicy. The awamori with the touch of smoky, the touch of spicy. It's amazing, amazing. Mel, if you want to continue.
Well, let's a couple questions for you, Diego, first. So the garnish on top, you was that Pocky?
Cookies.
Yeah, it's like a little chocolate
cookies
on the stick. Yeah, Pocky. And the chipotle that you used, is it just the dried pepper or like in a can chipotle?
A can.
A can chipotle.
Like in the can, like the wet one.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We use this syrup for so many cocktails without alcohol, with alcohol, because have apports the spicy touch and smoky. It's
Cool.
it's more complex for the cocktail, no? Complexity for the cocktail.
Yeah. So the mezcal you used, was that super smoky too? So you did smoky mezcal and smoky chipotle, or just less smoky mezcal?
Just two smoke, mezcal smoke and chipotle. You can use whatever you have in your house. No, it's no special mezcal for this cocktail because we don't need the mezcal character. We need only the smoky. If you want to change, you can use Isla whiskey, for example.
Very cool. So we've got another cocktail coming for us. So what's this next cocktail we have?
Hello, everyone. I'm gonna present you a cocktail really fun, really easy to drink. I think everyone will like this. It's really fruity. It's called the Rookie, just like me. I think it's good for the occasion. The first time I tried Shochu, it was when Diego came from Japan with all these bottles, and we started tasting them, and we realized they were really different, really versatile. So we were able to actually think about using them for cocktail, as a base, as a cocktail. Very interesting. My favorite was the Akatsaru Shochu. This one, it's distillated from sweet potato, and it has 25% alcohol. I actually drink it on its own. I like it like that. I also can imagine it in like a gin blend or a long drink. It's really easy to use as a base for a cocktail. So let's start it, right? First, I'm gonna smash some cucumber over there. Some freshness with the mint. Also, last year we had an event with Shochu, and we actually had to create 4 or 5 cocktails with a Shochu base, which actually was really fun because it was kind of a new product to use, and they came out all really tasty or really nice. Some of the Shochu team came over, and I think they really enjoyed the cocktails we created. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the recipe. So the cucumber, I just put a little bit, and for the mint, 3 leaves of it. Okay. I'm gonna do 4 cls of this beautiful Shochu. Also, I'm gonna use bergamot liquor, 3 cls of it. Then we actually have a homemade vanilla syrup. It's from a leftover. We actually have a pineapple and vanilla syrup, and we use the leftover seeds to make this syrup, which is actually really good too. 2 cl of it, 2 cl of lime juice. There you go. And I also love grapefruit juice. And I tried it with the cocktail, and it came out super tasty. The citrusy and the flavor was nice and sweet. Then, a little bit of that white. I wanted to make it really creamy. Let's shake it. We're very lucky we're at the bar, so I've got all the tools to make the cocktails, but still very easy to make at home. Also, I choose some easy ingredients for you to make it at home. I know a lot of people are locked down. Then we'll do a double string. A little ice cube. And who doesn't like sparkling? So I'm gonna add some grapefruit soda. Just a little bit on top. And I have a friend over here who it's called Rookie. This is gonna be our friend over here to put the cocktail in. But it's not enough because I want him to get some hair, and I'm gonna use some cotton candy on top to make it really, really fun. And this is Rookie, guys. I introduced you to the Rookie cocktail over there. I hope you can try it at home, and I hope you like it too.
Melanie, you need to go to Japan and meet Kuma. He's a black bear, and then you're gonna have to make a Kuma version of the Rookie cocktail.
Please, I would love to. I would love to.
Yeah, I don't know if Ryan and Diego, if you remember the Kuma, the black bear, like that's everywhere, right? In it's like the mascot of the city for yeah. Right.
That and the Tanuki.
Yeah. So this is, I'm glad you made a drink with some sparkling water. I feel like we've had such an amazing variety of cocktails. So starting with like an old fashioned style to like more of a martini style, something more of a sour style. And now we have something that's more of that Collins style drink. And so Melanie, when you made this drink, were you, try the Shochu and then it made you think of the Collins style, or is the Collins style cocktail your favorite style to make, or what were you thinking?
I actually, I like this kind of Shochu, as I said before, and we've been working with that a lot. And I think the base was the Shochu, yeah, and also, are you okay? Yeah. Okay, I have you over here, sorry. It's 25%, so it's really easy to use Shochu. You can actually mix it with other liquors and other spirits because it's not too strong, but you can also have it on its own. So the base was that, and then I like kind of gin fizz or English gin fizz kind of cocktails. So I tried to mix them both, and I think it worked well also with the herby and floral flavors of the Shochu.
I know that for a lot of us, from around the world, when we think of Spain and what cocktail Spain is thinking about all the time, it's usually the gin and tonic, right? So when someone comes in and they're like, I love gin and tonics, make me something with Shochu, is this the kind of drink you would make that person?
It could be, and they definitely will like it because it's really likable cocktail.
Great. So
it's not gonna be the same as a gin tonic. It can be a little bit more fruity or more sweet, but I think people will understand the complex of the cocktail and the Shochu.
Yeah, it sounds like something that I'd like to have on like a nice hot day. It sounds really refreshing. So
it's a cocktail that you can actually have at any time. So you can have it early or just late at night.
Very cool. Thank you very much. So a quick correction. So I misunderstood. I got really excited to talk about the sugarcane style of Shochu, but you were using the awamori before, which is it's made from the Thai style of rice, the indica rice, And the shochu that I was thinking about was it is the Kokuto shochu from the the Amai Island. So shochu, very wide category, lots of different things going on. It's still something that I am learning about every day, and so please don't be afraid to try it and to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, but we're all in this learning together. So I'm gonna go back to a couple of questions that came up just to answer them quickly, and we're gonna do a little quick Q&A with everyone now. So if anyone else has any other questions that you'd like to ask, please throw it in the chat right now. So real quick, for anyone who's interested in the Koji side of this, separate from necessarily the shochu and the alcohol side of this, if you are interested in doing Koji and other applications, there's a great book that came out last year called Koji Alchemy. The author's name is Richard Shih, S-H-I-H. It is an amazing book for how to cultivate Koji at home if you want to try your own fermentations. And it specifically really looks at non-traditional uses of Koji in modern cooking. So if you want to take popcorn and somehow use Koji to make a Koji popcorn, that's the book to look at. If you want to take persimmons and then somehow like dry it and then make it like a charcuterie preparation using Koji, Koji Alchemy is the book to look at. But it is also something that is a sub-ingredient that you can use in making cocktail ingredients. So one of the ways that I like to use Koji, separate from in the distilled product, is I will take the Koji rice. So I'll take rice, cultivate Koji on it, and then in the same way that you use malted barley to break down the starch in other places, I will use the Koji rice to break down starches in other things. So when making a syrup, instead of making a syrup just using sugar, what I'll do is I'll make the Koji rice, and then I'll blend that with a sweet potato, and then put that in water, let that sit for a while in a water bath, heat it up, let the Koji, the enzymes from the Koji, go into the sweet potato, break down that sweet potato, turn it into sugar, and then strain that off, and then you'll have a sweet potato syrup. If you've ever tried to make starch syrups, it's kind of hard because you're left with this cloudy, almost chalky texture to it. So one of the problems you'll have, if you make a ginger syrup and you take ginger and you just grind it, if you let that sit overnight in the fridge, you'll get a little bit of like sediment on that bottom, and it's almost like chalk. That's the starch in ginger that's coming out. So in that same way, other starches, if you wanted to make a rice syrup by just grinding rice, you're going to get this chalky texture, which you can let it sit and settle out, but you can also just turn that starch into sugar using things like Koji. So it's super interesting what you can do with Koji, still making cocktails, but really working on the culinary side of Koji, and not just somebody else already did the Koji work for me. And if you or don't want to invest in the equipment to cultivate Koji on your own, you can also buy freeze-dried Koji at Japanese supermarkets. And so you can just rehydrate that Koji rice. Mostly people use it to make their own like shio Koji, do their marinades and things, but you could be using that as an ingredient as well. So it is a very versatile culinary as well as cocktail ingredient. There was another question about sake versus shochu, and the simplest answer there is one is a distilled product, one isn't. So what's the difference between beer and whiskey? Well, you may start from the same grain, but one is distilled. But shochu and sake, both products that use Koji, both things you can make cocktails with. So would like to ask the bartenders that are with us, do you make sake cocktails? And if you do, when do you reach for sake, and what are you thinking about, using sake as an ingredient versus when you reach for shochu and shochu as an ingredient? So anyone have any thoughts on sake cocktails versus shochu cocktails?
Well, I think when we were talking about that difference in kind of profile between some of the higher strength shochu and the kind of mid to lower strength ones, you're taking that same mentality, but you've got a delicacy that comes from using, anywhere between 20 and 45% for your shochu, whereas you're getting down to kind of beer to wine to vermouth strength. Well, perhaps I don't think I've come across a sake as strong as vermouth, but you're getting into a much kind of lower ABV category, and with that you get a variety of different kind of textures, flavor profiles. Again, as you said, you're not distilling, you're not concentrating those, so it's got a very different profile, but you're automatically in a slightly kind of low ABV camp. So being able to kind of mix it in the same way. Again, this is a crude analogy, but when you're making beer cocktails, like as a way of keeping that character of the beer, not just using it for kind of length. I think that's where I've had good success with using sake is having that, amazing, still got that balance of like fruitiness, sweetness, florality with that kind of lovely underpinning savory note. Being able to have something that kind of respects that and uses it in a kind of considered way is where I've tended to have a lot of success.
In our case, it's super easy. We use Shochu or Awamori like protagonist in one cocktail. We use sake like a complement. Or if you don't like strong cocktails, less alcohol, we use sake. But normally, for the character, we use Shochu or Awamori.
Yeah, I think that for a lot of folks in America, you may be familiar with the bartender Kenta Goto. He's made a number of amazing sake cocktails. So if you're interested in sake cocktails, definitely check out cocktails made by Kenta. I know that a number of those are just, you can look up the recipes online, either from his time at Pegu Club or his bar currently, Bar Goto. And it's, for a lot of people here especially in New York, I think that people use it more like a wine. So in the way that you would use like a vermouth, or in the same way you would use something like Pinot de Charente, as Diego said, it's kind of more of a modifier rather than the principal character. So it's a very good way of thinking about that. But it's, to me, the thing that I love about sake is the texture is so different than a lot of other brewed products. So beer, it has a very specific texture to it. There's always that a little bit of bitterness to it too. These days, maybe too much bitterness to it, and then the bubble texture to it. But sake is generally very different, and sake is also a huge category. So I think that if you are interested in that Koji and the savory side of sake, if you get to the unfiltered sakes, you'll find a lot of interesting savory flavors there. So a fun side category within sake to try as a cocktail ingredient. Any other questions from folks? I see there's a couple more questions about experimenting with Koji at home. It is a little difficult. It does require somewhat precise temperature control. I mean, this is one of those things where if you're the kind of person where you would feel comfortable making your own fermented pickle products at home beyond the just simple vinegar cucumber pickle, and you're like, I'm going to make a sauerkraut, I'm willing to do lacto fermentation, you can probably do Koji, but you do have to do temperature. So if you have an immersion circulator for doing like water bath, you can use that to control the temperature. So it isn't that difficult to do. 10 years ago, this would have been very different because most people didn't have immersion circulators, but now you can just set that temperature in the water bath and walk away and maintain it. So it's pretty easy to do. Or if you're in a commercial kitchen, for those of us that are working in bars and restaurants, if you're on the restaurant side, not on the bar side, if they make bread and you have a proofing oven or a combi oven, that's perfect for maintaining the temperature and humidity for doing Koji work. But it is multiple days long, so it is very rewarding. I suggest everyone try it, but be prepared for a multi-day process. It's not like, one of the things I loved about cocktails versus cooking was, you can make 10 versions of a recipe very quickly, whereas cooking takes hours sometimes. Making Koji things takes days, and especially if you're doing it on the culinary side, may take weeks. So just be prepared to devote a lot of time before you get any results.
another suggestion of a hack on that, and actually suggested by a mutual friend of ours, Ariel, who actually obviously was running the fermentations for Restaurant Noma. About 10 years ago, when she was helping me with some hacks of it, she was like, you can actually buy automatic misters and heating mats, which are used if you have pet snakes. And it's actually quite a cheap way. Now, it's not going to give you as kind of dependable results of actually building a rig to kind of grow your Koji, but it is a cheaper way of getting started. And you can just adapt some kind of cooking pans as a way of kind of doing like a crude setup. And as you say, it's got a lot easier now in terms of buying molds and starting points. And the Koji Alchemy is a great starting point. But just to nod to what you said before, using Koji specifically as an ingredient, not only for amazakes or transformative agents, but just using the Koji in its own flavor is also, I think, something really fascinating for bartenders to start exploring.
Yeah, and so amazake, for those of you that don't know, it is traditionally a rice and Koji non-alcoholic product. So if you kind of think about if you were to take Koji and rice but don't add the yeast, so before it becomes sake, you could stop at the like just sugary rice water. That's amazake. It's a kind of a thing that, you know, is you can't get it in the summer. Like, you know, it's kind of like a easy soft drink that's a traditional rice product. And it is a very common flavor in Japan. And, you know, you can even get Kit Kats that are amazake flavored if you are interested in what that would taste like. And if you go to a Japanese market, you can often find straight amazake. But just to take that Koji rice, you know, you can add water to it, put it in an immersion circulator, however you want to convert it, and then make that into a rice syrup. It's super easy to do, and it is a very fun ingredient. Because it is a rice syrup, it'll give you a texture and a head when you shake it. So amazake syrup is an easy thing for anyone to get into, and I highly suggest you play with that. Someone else asks about umeshu. Bartenders, anyone, if you work with umeshu, ume being the Japanese plum?
Quite a lot of salt in packing it in, and they're like, I think people forget about the incredible like punch of sourness they have, but there are, you know, like it's an amazing. Oh, sorry, you actually umeshu, not right, the ume, but yeah, it's I mean, that to me is one of those, to actually Diego's point before, you know, the modifying ability, you know, you've got that wonderful tart plum note alongside that kind of sweetness and texture. Yeah, it's an amazing ingredient. And actually, I think, you know, thankfully that's for a kind of massive of bartenders, it's a bit easier to get hold of. And so being able to try that, taste it, and experiment with it in cocktails is a little bit easier, I think.
Yeah, it's an amazing, we have in the bar, fortunately, it's an amazing product to do classic cocktails like Bramble. You know, you can change the liquor. It's a perfect.
Yeah, for those of you that haven't tried it, it is like a liqueur. So it is sweet, it is alcohol, and it is this natural product made from ume. And yeah, to clarify, the thing that Ryan was first talking about, which is also a fun ingredient for cocktails, umeboshi is the pink, like, you know, pickled version of that for food. You may have seen that like in the center of a rice ball that's like kind of sour and salty. Also a fun ingredient, although very intense. You know how if you've ever had like warheads, like the sour candies, and then there's that face everyone makes when you have it, you'll make that face if you have ume straight. So it is a very sour product and fun. So unless there's any more questions, is there anything that you folks would like to add? Any closing thoughts about shochu, koji, cocktails?
I think just from my side is, you know, until you can get back out into bars and trying them, just, you know, see if you can experience the diversity of this category. You know, it's not as scary as you think. And, you know, to everybody's point, like sometimes it's a little tougher. There aren't, you know, thankfully, this is an amazing resource that is helping navigate some of the slightly more opaque labels. But, you know, it's really a chance to kind of open up your kind of repertoire of what you can kind of reach for. You know, brings such a different profile to your drinks that it's something that I think all bartenders, you know, as you're delving into it, you're getting more geeky, you're trying to expand the way that you look at things. It's an amazing category to explore. So I implore you all to start tasting and getting excited about where you can use it in your cocktail repertoire.
Guys, try because it's a new category. You can surprise your customers. It's incredible. You have a lot of options. You need to study before because it's so complicated to take good information. This webinar is perfect because the information here is wonderful. But try and surprise your customer because we need more. It's a new tool for us.
It's a particular flavor, and people actually really going to enjoy for those who want to explore more or try different things, because it's not common here, like in Madrid, these kind of flavors. It's really complex for our mouth, for example. But if you start working with it and finding cocktails like the one we made, or something easy to drink, or something really particular, and you give to people and explain about all the history behind the product, they're gonna like it because it's really interesting one.
Yeah, and for those of you that are going to go out and try this after the quarantines stop, highly suggest you go out there and you try it with food. It is very different, if you're sitting and just kind of blind tasting things on its own versus having it with food, especially those savory elements. You get to experience it in a different way. So go get a group of friends together, maybe get a Shochu brand ambassador to take you out, go to an izakaya and try a bunch of different Shochus, try it with food, and it'll be a completely different experience than just trying it on its own. And for those of you that missed the beginning of this, a recording of this will go up. Check out the JSS _ Shochu Instagram, and you'll see this seminar and all the past seminars there as well. If you have questions, in the future, please also send them on to us. We'd be very happy to help you navigate the wonderful world of Shochu. So thank you everyone that joined us to watch this. Thanks to the amazing bartenders in London and in Madrid. And we hope to see you soon in person and have a kampai together. So
it would be amazing. Thank you.